have been known as to be a little bit of a skeptic when it comes to VMC. When they first came out with the service, I think I wrote a blog post that was VMC or VMware on the AWS, you're doing it wrong. And my whole thought process was, if you're going to the cloud, you should do things in a cloudy way. And if you're just moving your VMware cluster to the cloud, that doesn't make any sense to me. I've sort of mellowed on my skepticism a little bit because people seem to be using it. So I'm curious, you mentioned some specific use cases. Can you give a couple examples of what those specific use cases are that are a good fit for this technology?
Yeah, certainly. So there's a handful of use cases that are pretty well documented from both AWS and VMware as why this might be a solution that you would want to look at. Certainly what I've seen from the times that I've been able to work with customers in deploying these solutions, the big ones I would say are certainly data center evacuation. So that really kind of comes into play with the timing aspect that I mentioned earlier. So if you have customers that need to get out of a colo quickly, VMC is a great option for that. And also from a timing perspective, if you have customers that are coming up on hardware refreshes, needing to go through the purpose of basically, evaluating how to refresh their entire infrastructure and take all that cost on versus maybe moving into a cloud solution that allows them to keep the same workloads that they have running financially, be an enticing option to look at. And certainly disaster. So for customers that maybe don't have a large disaster recovery presence today or don't even have a second site, it may make sense to look at just spinning up a DR site versus having to build a brand new physical site from the ground up.
Right.
What's the cost model end up looking like here? I mean, I'm hearing these use cases. I'm hearing people that are trying to use it as like a primary, like I don't want a data center anymore, but I don't want to lose my VMware, so I'm going to house it all up in the cloud now. What's the cost model look like? And I'm furrowing my brow because most of the reports I've heard have involved armored trucks, gold bullion, wheelbarrows, and such. I'd love to get your impression, Adam.
Yeah, so from a cost perspective, it's a little bit different than just your typical AWS native infrastructure. You still do have that aspect of you're paying for the resources that you consume. With VMware Cloud on AWS, the resource that you're consuming for the most part is that host level resource. So there is a certain price tag associated with a single host in VMware Cloud on AWS. And right out of the gate, to be able to spin up the service, you really are talking 3 hosts minimum to have a highly available VMware cluster. So now certainly there are egress charges, there's some network bandwidth stuff that's involved there, and things like public IPs that you can spin up on demand within the service. So kind of your typical AWS charges that you might be used to that are more kind of a drop in the bucket compared to, at the end of the day, if you're calculating how many hosts that you have and taking that cost for across the entirety of your SDDC, then that's going to be the majority of your costs right there.
Now, are these costs, is it split between VMware and AWS? Do I have 2 bills, or is it like all through VMware?
It's all through VMware.
Yeah.
And one of the things about cloud is that you're able to dynamically scale up and scale down. But when I think about like a software defined data center and the hosts in it, I don't think about slapping hosts in and pulling them out real quick. Can you do that, or are you pretty much stuck with 3 hosts and then maybe you add another, but you don't like scale up and down dynamically, do you?
You can. So within VMC, there is the notion of elastic DRS. So you have the ability to define your cluster within a range of hosts, and based on performance, you can automatically scale up if need be from, like a CPU or RAM perspective. Now,
Hmm.
one of the interesting, I don't know if I would call it a gotcha, but one of the things about the Elastic DRS service is that by default, it's always enabled for scaling if need be based on storage consumption. And that is if vSAN hits a 75% use threshold, it will automatically scale up to a new host because it requires that overhead to be able to, really run the service efficiently from a vSAN perspective. So that is a default that's baked into the SDDC. But to answer your question, yes, at the end of the day, you can very easily scale up and scale down hosts by simply going in and saying add host, and you sit there for about 10 minutes, watch a little progress bar go through, and that's it is as easy on that cloud scale, but just from a VMware perspective.